Hello, YouTube. I'm assuming most of you don't know me. I'm Daniel So, 2016 poli-sci grad from Davidson College, who's been covering sports, specifically the NBA, for a long time now. I used to freelance write for an NBA site called ClutchPoints.com as an NBA editorial writer, so I do know some of what I'm talking about. Today, I'll just be doing a brief introductory video covering the Eastern Conference in the NBA heading into the second half of the season, right after the All-Star break, in alphabetical order. So we'll start with the Atlanta Hawks today. The Atlanta Hawks have been a slight disappointment once again after talks that they would be a competitor in the Eastern Conference. Halfway through the season, the Hawks are 19-20 and the 8th seed in the East. However, the defense is sorely lacking. Clint Capella is the only good defensive player on the team. John Collins has stepped it up a little bit. He's been okay. But with DeAndre Hunter being injured with this meniscus thing for the past month and a half now, the defense has slipped once again, and the Hawks are floundering. They're in the 8th spot, but I'm not sure if they can hold that position. Hunter and Capella have been really good, so shout out to them. Hunter has had a breakout season, essentially, with a plus 4.3 plus minus. That's really good. But until the Hawks find a roster that can work around the significant defensive liability that is Trae Young, things are going to be tough. It's going to be tough sledding. Let's move on to the Boston Celtics. Can someone in the comment section please tell me what the hell happened to the Boston Celtics? Because it seems like just yesterday we were falling all over ourselves, talking about how Danny Ainge was going to find a way to turn this treasure trove of draft picks into a Bill Russell dynasty era of 2021, but it really didn't happen. A lot of those draft picks managed to bust in the form of James Young, Jared Sullinger, Gershon Yabusele, Fab Melo. There's been a lot of mismanagement decisions in terms of contracts given out, per se. I didn't like the Kemba Walker signing. Kyrie was always a loose cannon that just blew up in their faces, essentially. I think that was the main key. They weren't expecting Kyrie to just bail after a season. They definitely expected him to stay long term. Another reason for the Celtics' struggles this year, they're 19-17 in a very watered down East, so not doing very well in the standings as of the recording of this video. Marcus Smart's been injured with a calf injury for over the past month as well, so he's the big contributor to this team, and I think it showed in their 9-10 record without him. For the Celtics to turn it around this year, they need to find a consistent way for Jason Tatum, and Jaylen Brown, of course, to become better facilitators in pick-and-roll scenarios. Yes, I know they've improved this area sometimes. I've watched it a little bit, but they are still pretty much isolation scorers. They don't distribute that well, and it doesn't seem like at the end of games that they're willing to really pass the ball, because it seems like if Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown has the ball in their hands in those closing seconds, they're going to try to take a tough shot to win the game, and it's going to be a poor shot to end the game. It's going to be a tough shot, low percentage. They need a distributor, and with Kemba getting healthier, he missed obviously the first 2 months or more of the season. Maybe this team can start to pick up some steam coming out of the All-Star break. But to me, it seems unlikely that they are going to make the Eastern Conference Finals. The Brooklyn Nets are the next team we need to talk about. That blockbuster trade is going to be felt for years around this league. James Harden made a complete ass of himself, obviously. We all saw that. It was on NBA channels 24/7, and everyone was talking about it. The Nets made out with the guy they wanted. They gave up the whole squad basically to get James Harden on the team, and though they lack depth, their top three, Irving, Harden, and Durant, I mean, good luck outscoring those guys in the playoffs. 125 points on the coldest of shooting nights. This team is absurd in terms of scoring output. You're not going to be able to match them scoring if it's their night. And defensively, I think they might have some woes, and they don't have the best depth. But I think Bruce Brown, Jeff Green, Nick Claxton, and DeAndre Jordan, these pieces, the role players they have around them, around the big three, I guess, and now the addition of Blake Griffin, I think they will have enough depth to get it done and get out of the Eastern Conference. So the next team we need to talk about, the Charlotte Hornets. Man, the most fun team in the league to watch, and it's not just because I'm from North Carolina myself. I agree with Bill Simmons wholeheartedly, and I don't do that very often. You'll rarely hear me saying that, if ever. That dude is a complete Boston homer. So I agree with Bill and Zach Lowe on their podcast this year. The Charlotte Hornets win my league pass rankings. They're the most fun team to watch in basketball most nights. LaMelo Ball has this team running in a really crazy pace, but he is making it happen, man. He has so much flair to his passes. He is a good decision maker as a rookie in the NBA, which is extremely rare to see. And I've been patting myself on the back because I was saying in the preseason that, or even before the draft, that LaMelo should go number one overall when I saw the package that he had. And there were questions, obviously, about his work ethic and the defense and how much he actually cared about basketball. But you definitely take a risk on a guy with this type of skill set. He's shown a flair for playmaking and surprisingly defense and shooting. Those were also apparently question marks, but he's made the Hornets very, very fun to watch. Very fun to watch. The ball is zipping all over the court. People are running to the rim every play. They're cutting off the ball. There's a lot of movement. Despite the rookie status, I think he's pretty much emerged as the de facto maestro and point guard of the team and the leader of the team. The bread and butter of today's league is obviously the pick and roll. He's awesome at that. So he's letting shots fly. He doesn't care. He's confident. I like this kid a lot. So whenever James Borrego figures out that the team is better with Bismack Biyombo on the bench because he kills all of the team's spacing and offensive flow with his absolute brick hands, the Hornets might fly or buzz even higher. Buzz City. Cody Zeller and PJ Washington, they're far better players than Biyombo, so they need to see the court. If Biyombo gets 5 minutes, okay, but this guy is consistently getting around 20 minutes a game, so Borrego needs to get his head examined if he keeps doing that. He needs to let the youth on this team develop. Miles Bridges, PJ Washington, Cody Zeller, these guys are the franchise's future moving forward, along with LaMelo and maybe Gordon Hayward because he's also been a major contributor this season. Shout out to Gordon, he's played very well. The Chicago Bulls, the next team. The Bulls have gone as Zach LaVine has gone, and he has been absolutely balling the past 2 seasons for the Bulls. If I'm the Bulls, there is no way in hell I am trading this guy for first round, second round, whatever fucking picks, man. The dude is way too damn good for that. Thaddeus Young has also been a very important contributor for them, actually. He's been coming off the bench. Now he's in the starting lineup as of today, it looks like, with Satoransky. This guy's been on fire all season, putting up insane numbers in very little time on the floor, around 25 minutes a game. And he's giving the Bulls a distributor and defensive anchor that can switch all types of pick and roll coverages. He's a good distributor, man. He's really good at passing for a guy who's 6'9" and plays the 4 spot, 5 spot. LaVine deserves to be on a better team, I know that. But if the Bulls management is smart, they're going to turn things around in the Windy City and find a way to attract a damn free agent to play with Zach LaVine and maybe take this team and this city somewhere they haven't gone since, obviously, Derrick Rose, unfortunately, horrifically went down with that ACL injury against Philly all these years ago. As currently constructed, I'm not holding out too much hope for the Bulls' playoff hopes this year. They might be able to make the play-in games, but they're not great. Next up, we're talking about, speaking of not great, we have the Cleveland Cavs. First thing I have to say is fantastic trade, though, by the Cavs for Jarrett Allen. They paid bottom dollar, if that's a thing, opposite of top dollar for Jarrett Allen. He's still a very young center, very productive. All of the stats have been great, and he's a great team player, says the right things. There's nothing to dislike about Jarrett Allen. The Cavs obviously smartly immediately decided to part ways with Andre Drummond. They said, yes, we're going to sit you down. We're going to find a team to, essentially trade for you after we buy you out, or we'll see how that works out. The amount of times I've watched Drummond act like the next coming of Jokic, though, is absurd. He's so bad. It's hilarious whenever I'm rooting for the other team that he's playing against, though. That being said, I do hope the Lakers manage to get Drummond because they need center help right now with Anthony Davis hurt. Man, that the Lakers do not look good, but we will get to that in the Western Conference rundown. These young guys on the Cavs are pretty impressive, though, sometimes. Some nights, of course, this team is inconsistent. They're made complete. This whole roster is made of young players. You've got Colin Sexton, Taurean Prince, Cedi Osman, Darius Garland, Jarrett Allen. All of these guys are young players that can develop, but right now the Cavs are just kind of a mess, and they're not going to be great. They're not going to be very competitive this year. That's about it. Next, unfortunately, we have an even worse team, the Detroit Pistons. An absolute dumpster fire of a franchise and team. Let me repeat that. Detroit Pistons are flaming hot trash, and they have been for the better part of a decade, unfortunately. And their decisions this offseason and in recent years continue to bolster that opinion from me. The Pistons legitimately look like a team without any sort of vision or direction, and that's okay at high school or recreational ball level, the Y. When you're playing at the Y, that's okay to have no direction. But in the NBA, it's completely disgraceful, man. You're being paid. These teams are making way too much money to be this poorly managed. The Pistons have managed to lose budding all-star center Christian Wood to the Rockets for absolutely basically nothing. Traded the clearly very talented Bruce Brown to the Nets for a second-round pick. And for a team devoid of talent every year, why are the Pistons trading their most talented players every year for second-round picks that are likely to never return any sort of value in reality? To make matters worse, the Pistons have a long track record of taking on and signing horrifically shitty contracts. Josh Smith, now Andre Drummond, and Blake Griffin are added to that list, and Blake has been bought out and he's out of town already. Horrible decision making. Let's move on to a better team. Slightly better managed, for sure. The Indiana Pacers, a team that I expected to be in the Eastern Conference playoff picture right now, but really got screwed early in the season by the injury to TJ Warren. TJ Warren was their leading scorer last year, I believe, and just their best wing playmaker in general. He could get his own shot, for sure, and he could get himself to the line very often. Without their heady scoring leader from last season, the Pacers have had to rely heavily on Malcolm Brogdon and Sabonis for scoring, along with whoever else feels capable. Some nights it might be TJ McConnell, Justin Holiday. You don't really know what to get from this team now with TJ out. And that's reflected in their record. They're currently 17-20. The loss of TJ Warren is likely going to doom their season, but I have liked what I've seen at points from Brogdon and Sabonis. These two guys are definitely studs. They're very, very good. The Pacers do still have a chance. I think they sit currently a half game out of the 8th spot as of the recording in the video. So they will have a chance, but I don't expect them to go too deep. But they are definitely a competitive team compared to the likes of the Pistons and the Cavs, which we just covered. Next, the Miami Heat. They had a rough start to the season for sure, which I mostly attribute to Jimmy Butler being injured for that stretch. Jimmy Butler is the best player on this team still. It's definitely not Bam Adebayo. Bam is a very good player still, but Jimmy is definitely the leader and the best player. And I think when healthy, he's the guy who's going to lead them to wins. This Heat team is still also very deep, and I think they're actually better than the Knicks or the Celtics, who are currently ranked ahead of them in the Eastern Conference standings. I expect the Heat to improve on this 18-18 start going into the All-Star break. They'll be a team that no one wants to see in the playoffs. I like what the Heat have in terms of depth with Butler, Tyler Hero, Dragic, Adebayo, Duncan Robinson, Kelly Olynyk, Kendrick Nunn, Mo Harkless. Even Andre Iguodala, I think, can still contribute, even though he is definitely a fossil at this point. I believe this Heat team can finish top 4 in the East, so let's see where they take it out of the All-Star break. Next, the Milwaukee Bucks. The Bucks have been slightly disappointing to me this season, given that I thought the Eric Bledsoe trade for Jrue Holiday was the key to all of their woes that they experienced the past 2 postseasons. Basically just bowing out in the second round each year because Giannis simply can't learn to shoot a basketball. And he still hasn't learned how to distribute out of the post without turning the ball over. His handle is sometimes wild and suspect. And teams just build walls in the paint, and the Bucks and him and Giannis have not been able to correct that problem. He just charges into the paint still without any sort of real plan. And I think he looks like a deer in the headlights in the playoffs when he has Embiid and teams just throwing long bodies like Siakam and Kawhi and throwing guys into the paint. He doesn't really have a secondary option. He hasn't developed his game in the post or the mid-range, and I'm uncertain if he ever will at this point because I've been saying this for at least the past 2 years. He's still the same beast in the paint and on defense, great help defender, great shot blocker. These are all things that we've said about him. Teams have figured him out by now, and he definitely needs to diversify the skill set in general if he wants to continue to get deeper into the playoffs. A trustworthy set of post moves is where to start for him, maybe even a short 10-foot fadeaway. They would do the team a world of good, But by the metrics, this Bucks team is just generally worse than last season, which I didn't expect given the addition of Jrue Holiday. I know Jrue has been injured at some points and missed some games this season, so hopefully coming down the stretch of this season, the Bucks managed to get into gear and show us why I expected them to come out at the top of the East until the James Harden trade happened. The New York Knicks are next. And boy, the Knicks are a welcome big surprise. I was never a New York Knicks fan because they've always been bad. I liked watching the Carmelo Anthony, J.R. Smith team, Jason Kidd. That team was entertaining for sure. But they haven't had a good team since then, a good competitive team. So who in the hell expected the Knicks with Julius Randle as the star, as the all-star, to be sitting at the 5th spot in the East coming out of the All-Star break? I don't know if even Spike Lee in his wildest, wettest dreams imagined this. This is absolutely insane. New York Knicks, run by James Dolan, having an actually good season? No, it can't be real. We're in an alternate reality. Slap me. I don't want to be in it, actually. Julius Randle is for real, though. This guy is putting the team on his back. For many nights this year, he's carried them to victories. The Beyblade Randall memes can stop sometimes. The guy isn't just putting his head down, spinning his way into the double and turning it over, Andre Drummond style. He's making great post moves. He's spinning. He's spinning. Oh, that wasn't intended. He's he's no longer selfishly hunting stats like he himself professed that he was at times because he thought that he needed to just be the scorer for the team. He needed to get his 25 is what he said in his Players Tribune article. He's proven me wrong this year about him not being a leader, and I'll be happy to watch him continue to put this team on his shoulders to wins. And as long as it can continue, I'll be here to watch it. My hopes aren't too high, though, given that the management and coaching of the team still seems like a problem. I don't love Tom Thibodeau as the coach. He's proven that he will run his starters into the ground and that he will just go run with the veterans, even if they're less talented than the younger player who will give you more upside, like Emmanuel Quickley. Emmanuel Quickley needs to be a starter, and he needs to get more minutes ASAP. Heard it here first. The Orlando Magic are the Orlando Magic, unfortunately. They are the next team we have to talk about. They are forever stuck in the purgatory of this league, which is loving to make the 8th spot or 7th spot and then getting bounced in the first round, almost making the playoffs, or just simply like they are this year, 13-23 because of a litany of injuries. I mean, despite some strong performances from Vucevic, and he's been very consistent in most games, the Magic simply aren't good enough to compete, especially when you factor in the injuries to Jonathan Isaac, Aaron Gordon, Evan Fournier, Markelle Fultz. Even Cole Anthony has been missing because of a fractured rib for the past month, and Cole Anthony looked pretty good for a rookie, even though he didn't seem like he was completely ready for a 35-minute-a-game starting NBA point guard job. He was still playing quite well. That's why the Magic are 13-23. They're a pretty talented roster. I don't think they would be 13-23, obviously, without the injuries, but I don't know if they would still be hunting for a playoff spot like people thought they would. Jonathan Isaac, I think, is the main spot here that we need to talk about. He was playing amazing defense until that injury happened. So I think this team goes as he and Aaron Gordon will go because they're the best defenders on this team. And Vucevic is the best offensive player. They need to go through him more, which they already are, but with no other options, they don't really have enough to win. Next, the Philly Sixers. Well, Embiid just got hurt, and thankfully it's not an ACL or MCL tear or anything serious. I believe it's just a sprain, so he will be back hopefully soon. He was managing to stay impressively healthy until this injury just happened. Even still, the numbers are without dispute MVP level. Embiid is averaging 32 points a game on 52% from the floor, 11.1 rebounds. 11.6 rebounds, 3.3 assists per game, and throw in 1.4 blocks and 1.2 steals in 33 minutes a game. This guy was definitely the front runner for the MVP in my opinion. And unfortunately, my bet on him now looks pretty screwed because he got injured and will have to miss probably 2 weeks or so. And that usually takes you out of MVP contention because you need to play about 85% of the season normally in most seasons to win the MVP. Maybe there will be an exception given that this is the COVID season and just injuries are everywhere and people are missing because of either the virus or injury a lot of the time. There's Ben Simmons. He deserves Defensive Player of the Year. He does. He's held it down on defense, and though he still cannot hit a jump shot to save his life, his defense has improved even. He was already great last season, but this year he took it up a notch, and Embiid and him, they are running a clinic on teams defensively. Their size and their length, they're blocking all sorts of shots in the paint. They're disrupting passing lanes, forcing turnovers. They're playing a very efficient brand of basketball, getting open shots. Shout out to Tobias Harris for holding it down in fantasy, scoring a bunch of points, but also being a solid 20-point per game scorer for this team, shooting threes pretty well. Doc Rivers, once again, bringing out a great season from Tobias Harris. The last time he played like this was with the Clippers when Doc was his coach, so I don't think this is a aberration per se. However, they will have their work cut out for them. The Brooklyn Nets are in this conference now with the Brooklyn Nets are real. James Harden, Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant. This team, if healthy, will be an absolute force in the playoffs. So they're going to have to match up with those guys, and it'll be fun to watch. I expect to see Philly and Brooklyn in the Eastern Conference Finals when all is said and done. Next up, the Toronto Raptors. The Raptors started off the season horribly, but since then they've bounced back to take the eighth spot in the playoffs, which is now held, unfortunately, by the Atlanta Hawks, actually, as of today, because they've lost since then. But this roster is definitely headed for a rebuild anyways. I don't think the Raptors are going to continue to hold on to these pieces. By pieces, I mean Ochai Anunoby, Norman Powell, possibly Pascal Siakam, Terrence Davis, Chris Boucher. These guys are all very young and very brilliant players, and I believe that the Toronto Raptors are probably headed for a rebuild of some sort. And I think Masai Ujiri is going to, before the trade deadline, commit in the next 10 days, basically, blow up this team, and you're going to see a fire sale, and a lot of these players are going to be playing for teams, for different teams. And this Raptor experiment is going to be over, and they got a championship out of it, so the Kyle Lowry era might be over as well. We will see. Next, the Washington Wizards. Once again, a complete joke of a team. Signing Westbrook was a horrible idea if their idea of signing Westbrook was to re-sign him, per se. If they wanted to sign Westbrook to get him off the books eventually, then that's fine, or use him as an asset when he's expiring to take on salary for an actually good player. But if they wanted to re-sign Westbrook as an incentive to Beal re-signing, they're absolutely out of their goddamn minds. Like, Westbrook is a horrible player at this point of his career. He has no basketball IQ still, turns it over far too often, and can't shoot the basketball. He's probably shooting close to 28-29% from downtown on the season. The Wizards are horribly managed, and Bradley Beal, if he has a brain, is going to get out of town as quickly as possible. This team is not making the playoffs, of course. This team is going nowhere. The Washington Wizards need to do something, and I don't know what. But the track record here for these losing franchises turning their teams around, it isn't great. It isn't great. Hi everyone, thanks for watching the video. Hope it informed you about the Eastern Conference and the NBA this year a little bit. Like I said earlier, if you have any comments or suggestions, leave them in the comments below, because this is our first time using Pinnacle Studio software. So me and my team would love any comments or help with the cuts, because they might be kind of sharp. Thanks.